This week's episode is brought to you by that loud-ass baby crying on the airplane. Oh, I can hear you. I'm just not going to make eye contact because I don't want your parents to feel worse than they already do.
It's time for the late midday show, featuring your host, Hardip Singh.
Woo! Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into this week's episode of the Late Midday Show. I'm, of course, your host, Hardip Singh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's get into the news. Now, since the NBA Finals and the NHL playoffs have come to an end, we're going to have to find something to do with our spare time. Thank God this year the World Cup is taking place in Russia. Now all of North America gets to pretend like they give a fuck about soccer. This past weekend, Mexico, although being highly unfavored, was able to defeat the German national team. Following the soccer team's victory, tremors felt underneath the Mexican landmass resembled that of a minor earthquake. Which to many of you I'm sure sounds impressive, but you haven't seen me in Cancun with a couple of shots of tequila. Oh! Yes! The clock is ticking for Canadian Parliament to legalize marijuana. Sources say we're much closer to a final decision. The only issue is getting everyone in the same room. Half of the people are out on the front lawn playing frisbee. Some can't even find the location of the building. Meanwhile, others are taking recess breaks, and many are reaching for snacks mid-conversation. And speaking of Canadian politics, the province of Ontario recently elected their own Donald Trump, Doug Ford. It'll be interesting to see if he follows the strategies of his southern neighbor or of his older brother, former Premier of Ontario. In a recent Sunday Times article, Sandra Bullock revealed that she was afraid of Harvey Weinstein. Shoo, I'm not even half as attractive, and I'd be terrified to stand in an elevator with Harvey Weinstein, let alone be in a room alone with him. All jokes aside, I hope this Jabba the Hutt looking ass couldn't get a date even if it was fresh at the grocery store ass, bought a dozen donuts and still couldn't share 'em ass, if the Incredible Hulk only focused on carbs and not cardio looking ass, uglier than Bowser, no chance with Peach looking ass, thinks he's Bruce Wayne but uglier than the Joker looking ass. No game, tiny, wee-wee, ugly muv looking ass. Somehow managed to come off worse than Trump ass. Gets exactly what's coming to him. And finally, the World Health Organization has claimed that video game addiction is actually a mental illness. Who could have guessed that having your kids sit in front of a television for 12 hours a day playing make-believe was going to have some negative effects? Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Late Midday Show. I'm, of course, your host, Hardip Singh. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that little bell button for notifications, and stay tuned for new content every week.